Hey guys, so let me introduce myself first. My name is Andrew and I'm part of the marketing team over at SEO Ranking. And today I'm joined by Helen Pollitt, who is the managing director at Arrows Up, which is an SEO and digital marketing consultancy. And she also moonlights as a university lecturer on web analytics and marketing. All in all, Helen has over 10 years of experience in digital marketing, specializing in SEO and digital analytics. I'm gonna give Helen the word in a couple of minutes. And first I wanna just say a couple of things about the topic of this webinar. So today we're gonna be talking about proving your ROI for SEO. And before we start, I just wanted to say a couple of things. If you guys have any questions, you can just throw them in the chat as you did right now, or you can mark them as a question by going over to the Q&A tab at the bottom and just type in a question there, and we will make sure to get them at the end of the webinar. So, and for those of you who leave the best question, and it will be for Helen and I to decide which one's the best, and we will give the optimum subscription to for SEO Ranking for 1 month. So just so everyone that leaves a question, just make sure to do, you don't have to do anything, but just we will reward the best question with a prize. So once again, you will get the recording in a couple of days. And without further ado, let me give the word over to Helen.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. It's actually saved a good few minutes off of my talk because I was going to say all of that myself. So thank you so much for doing that for me. And awesome to see so many people from around the world listening today. That's amazing. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon for me right now. So if it's really, really early in the morning, I'm really sorry that you had to get up so early, but thank you. And also if you're having to stay out really late to watch this, and again, thank you so much for being here. I am now going to try with some hopefully technical skill to share my screen. Bear with me just 1 moment. I am talking to you today about proving the return on investment of your SEO. Now, just to put this in a little bit of context for you, I recently, before 2020 started imploding, was in the process of selling a house. Now, in the UK, when you are selling a house, you instruct a group of estate agents, a company of estate agents, to essentially market that house for you and to sell it on your behalf. Now, the estate agents that I chose to use were obviously very, very keen to keep my business. They'd got me in a slightly long-term contract with them, but essentially I think they were trying to prove their worth to me. So when that contract came to an end, I didn't just sack them off and try a different estate agent. So every single month, they would send me through the post a letter with a lot of marketing data on it, all about my house. They would tell me how many times someone had viewed my house on their website, how many times someone had clicked on a picture of my house on their website, how many times people had clicked through all of the pictures of my house on their website. Now, I am a marketer who specializes in marketing data and teaches a master's in marketing data. And yet I still did not care about all of this information that they were sending me. So I cannot imagine what other people were thinking when they kept getting sent this data. And I absolutely think that that sort of data would have been amazingly useful for their own marketing team. But for me as a client, I just didn't care. All I wanted to know was, had they sold my house? And if they hadn't sold my house, how close were they to selling my house? And through this entire process, frustrating, stressful as selling a house is, it kept occurring to me that why was I not caring about this marketing data? Because marketing data is something that I spend a lot of time looking at. And yet when it came to my own house and trying to sell that, it wasn't what I was concerned about. And it made me think, despite the fact that these estate agents were trying to prove to me that they were bringing a return on my investment, i.e. the commission that I was going to be paying them, the marketing data they're sending me wasn't useful to me. And I wonder, how often do we as SEOs do that exact same thing to our clients and our bosses? We provide them with a load of data that we think is really useful and interesting, but actually they don't really care that much about, because at the end of the day, all they want to know is, have we sold more stuff for them? And if we haven't sold more stuff for them, is our activity, the SEO work that we're doing, getting them into a better position so they will end up selling more stuff? Because at the end of the day, It's really the revenue that they care about. So today I'm talking to you about proving that the SEO activity that you're carrying out on behalf of your client or internally if you work for a brand is actually worth the budget that they are paying or even the salary that they're paying you at the moment. So I think it's really important that we can, as SEOs, do this, that we can prove our worth, and we're going to look at why that's important. If I could get the PowerPoint presentation to work. There we go. Why prove return on investment? The benefits of showing the value of your work. Why is it important? Why do we have to do it? Essentially, to get buy-in. If you want your client or your boss to buy into your amazing ideas, your great SEO plans, you have to show to them that they're going to get a return on that investment. You might have the most amazing idea for an outreach campaign. It is going to go viral. You're going to get so many backlinks off the back of this campaign. It is a genius idea. But unless you can prove to your boss or your client that the money they're going to invest in this particular campaign is actually going to equal money coming back from it, they're probably going to say no. So actually, at the end of the day, we have to prove the ROI of our SEO work if we want to be able to keep doing SEO work. And it might be that in order for you to get the sign off on your next budget or your next project, you actually have to prove the work that you've done in the past was worth it. Also, at this challenging and troublesome time that we're going through at the moment, budgets are scarce. A lot of us, myself included, have gone through the pain of having our SEO budgets cut or in some cases gone entirely. So we need to get really good at proving that our SEO work is worth the money that we're being paid to do it. Because unfortunately, at the moment in particular, budgets are going, and we need to be able to show that SEO isn't the area that you want to be cutting budgets from. So we prove that SEO is worth time and money, and we prove the return on that investment by showing people data that actually has meaning to them, that actually shows them that their KPIs, the things that they're interested in, the sales, the exposure, the visibility, is actually coming from the SEO work that we are doing. So, as it was mentioned in that awesome introduction, I am also working, when I'm not managing Arrows Up, as an associate lecturer for a local university, teaching a master's in digital marketing web analytics. And this week, I've had the amazing opportunity and privilege to be marking my students' end of year's reports. Now, that equates to about 60 hours of me looking at data and their analysis of data. It's a lot. My brain is probably not working quite as well as it was at the beginning of this week, but because I have been so immersed in reports and academics and looking at other people's studies of data, I am very much in that mindset of setting things out in a very structured process. So that's what we're going to look at today, the process of proving the ROI on your SEO. So step one of that process is making sure you have the right level of measurement in place so that when you are coming to prove your ROI, you've actually got the data to hand that is accurate and can prove the message that you're trying to communicate. So to start with, we need to get ready to measure accurately. So you need to check your tracking. Now, it might be that you are using something like Google Analytics. Maybe you've got Google Tag Manager involved. Maybe you've got lots of money and you're actually using something awesome like Adobe Analytics or another tool for making sure that you are keeping on top of the traffic that is coming into your website. Whatever tool you're using, you need to keep checking that tracking periodically. Because if you don't, you might come to the point where you're looking to report on data and find out that it's not actually there for you to report on. I have seen it too many times to count with clients who have had some kind of change happen on their website and suddenly their Google Analytics tracking code has gone from the site. And when I've come to look at their monthly report and talk about the data, there's no data there for me to talk about. So you do need to keep an eye on your tracking. And it's not just keeping an eye on the fact that the tracking is there, but actually that it's tracking accurately. It might be, for instance, you want to talk about the fact that your bounce rate across your entire website has suddenly halved, but actually it's not a result of the SEO work that you've been doing at all. It's because you're suddenly started double counting because you have 2 tracking codes on your website, which again is something I've seen happen too many times. So you need to make sure that the tracking that you are doing is accurate and consistent. You also need to do things like monitor changes to your site because stuff happens on your website that absolutely will affect how well your SEO campaigns work. If you are looking to prove the return on investment from SEO activity, you need to be able to show with accuracy the work that you have done as an SEO and be able to prove that that is what has caused an increase or a decrease in traffic. Because if you can't prove that, then you're going to struggle to say that SEO is or isn't paying off for your client or your boss. And monitoring changes to your site is really important, because we all know that there are so many different aspects to SEO, so many different factors that absolutely will impact whether you are increasing or decreasing in organic traffic to your website. So you need to know what's going on in your website to make sure that the changes that are being made are ones that you know about and have sanctioned. Now, the wonderful people at SE Ranking have very kindly given me a lot of opportunity to get to know their platform. And I have recently come across their page changes monitoring system, which is pretty much exactly what I'm talking about. Essentially, you're able to record specific pages that you want to have monitored, and the software will alert you whenever there's a change made. So for instance, in the screenshot I've shown you, I was looking at recording a couple of pages that I've been working on, and it has told me that the page titles changed, the header tags changed, and text on that page has changed. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. You need to know when there are even minor changes going on the pages that you are working on from an SEO perspective, because all of these sorts of changes can absolutely impact how successful your work is going to be. And if you are working on a page and you have recently rewritten a meta title, for instance, and a couple of days later someone else goes and reverts it back to how it originally was, you need to know about that, because that is going to impact your test, whether you have had success with the SEO work that you're doing or not. And I had a client recently who really brought this home to me, because I was checking their rankings and they had dipped by about 60 places across most of their core keywords. And my heart did that thing where it suddenly just skips a beat, because I thought, what have I done? What have I done with my SEO work that has caused them to drop so significantly in their rankings? This is terrible. But I very quickly found out that actually it wasn't anything that I had done. The work that I had been doing had actually been leading to an increase in the traffic that they get into their website. But unfortunately, one of the colleagues on their team had been making significant changes to the web pages and hadn't told anyone. And because of that, the work that I had been doing was actually getting overwritten, which is awful, really, if I'm trying to prove that my SEO work is paying off. So you really do need to keep on top of the changes that are happening on your website. And if you can, this means monitoring other people's work. Now, that's not you keeping tabs on people or demanding that they update you all the time, but it's just a case of trying to get involved in other people's business, essentially. You need to be making sure that you are part of discussions that happen around changes to the website, or you are aware of and involved in the processes that go towards signing off on changes to the website, just so you know what sort of things are happening that could potentially impact SEO. And it's quite difficult to do in reality, because a lot of people will have access to the website, they will have access to the CMS, they might well have access to your Google Analytics account and therefore can filter things unexpectedly or change the data that's in there. Or it could well be that they have quite a lot of input into messaging that goes around the website, and therefore all of that stuff can impact how well your SEO campaigns will work, and therefore makes it look bad if it all goes downhill, and makes it suggest that actually the work that you're doing isn't working, when in fact it could well be. So what we need to do is identify the variables. That is, what else might be affecting organic traffic to a website, so that you can make sure that you're aware of it and talk about it when you're trying to prove return on investment from SEO. Now, this largely means talking to other people within your company, specifically other SEOs. Now, it might be that you're working in an agency and you have a team of other SEOs working on your clients' websites. And because of that, they might well be making changes that are great and, in theory, brilliant idea. But however, unless you know about them and are able to monitor them or even annotate them in your Google Analytics account, it's going to be very difficult for you to prove that the work that's happened has resulted in an uplift in sales from organic traffic, for instance. Because unless you know what's been carried out in terms of SEO, you can't really say that that specifically was what led to this increase or potentially decrease in traffic and sales. So you really do need to know what other people are doing. And SEOs aren't the only ones who might be affecting how well your SEO traffic and conversions might be going. Developers can also have a big impact on how well a website can perform from an SEO perspective. Now, developers should be an SEO's best friend because they have the power and the ability to enact so many great changes, to implement things that we are desperate to see implemented on a website. But unfortunately, if we don't communicate enough with developers, stuff will happen, stuff will get changed on a website that we're not necessarily aware of. And that can have a massive impact on how well the website performs organically. I have been in the situation before where websites have been launched without me knowing about it. I was planning for a migration to happen in a couple of months' time, but instead it got fast-tracked and the website was just launched. The developers who were working on the website weren't quite aware of the implications that would have on SEO, so they did a few shortcuts to get the website launched early, most of which was against the advice that I had given. And of course, that's never a good thing when you are looking to migrate a website well and preserve its organic traffic. So that's just one example of how you need to know what's going on with other teams to make sure that they are working with you and you're not working against each other. Also, other marketers, they are absolutely going to have an impact on how well your SEO performs. If you have, for instance, a paid search team involved with your client or with your brand, it might be, for instance, that they suddenly turn on a brand campaign. And all of the traffic that used to be coming through as organic, because people were searching specifically for your brand or specifically for a product that you have, would be going to the website and it would be counted as organic. But if they suddenly turn on a brand paid campaign, then some of that traffic might just go through as paid instead. Now, that would look to most people like organic traffic had suddenly fallen off a cliff, but actually it's not. It's just been shared with another team with your company. And that's the sort of thing that you need to know about, because you need to be able to prepare your boss or your client that they are going to see a decrease in organic traffic, but it's not because of anything that you've done wrong. It's actually just because the paid search team has taken a portion of that traffic. And if you're working really closely with the paid search team, you can actually talk about whether they really need a brand campaign or whether actually organic was sufficient for capturing that traffic. So working hand in hand with other marketing teams is also really, really critical when you are trying to prove that SEO is paying off. And finally, the most dangerous and terrifying group of people who will work alongside you on any campaign, the interns. They are the people who are so keen to do well. They are the ones who want to prove that they are able to do the work, that they are going to excel in the future, that they are at the beginning of a wonderful and elaborate career. Unfortunately, that enthusiasm often leads to mistakes being made because they don't quite have the level of understanding or training they need in order to make changes on websites that aren't going to eventually cause a few problems for SEO. So interns and the work that they're doing does need to be very closely monitored if they are doing anything around your website. Even if it's just something like they are uploading copy to the website, just make sure that they know the processes that are involved with that sort of work, so that when they are making changes, they are doing it within the processes and not outside of the processes, which could well lead to issues with your website. I have, again, seen it in the past where changes have been made to a web page. A really helpful, super keen intern has then gone and reverted the changes because they didn't realize that they were supposed to be left as they were and thought a mistake had been made, so rolled it back, which of course isn't very helpful. Other people within the company absolutely knew that that wasn't the process. They didn't do it like that, but the interns hadn't been told. So just keep an eye on them. They can be a wonderful ally, but they also just need to be checked every now and again. So you are working with the teams that you work alongside and not against them. What else do you need to do in order to prove that your SEO activity is actually paying off? You need to control all of the other factors that could impact SEO success and limit them wherever possible. So this means keeping an eye on the website changes, but also trying to minimize them where possible. Now, that's not going to be possible in a lot of cases, but if you are working with your development team, your marketing team, and you are being involved in the processes where things get signed off, you can start to have a little bit of a say in when things get rolled out and in what sort of order they get rolled out, so that you've got a better chance of keeping an eye on what that is doing to your organic traffic. Because if there's a major website change and your organic traffic suddenly plummets, you need to know that those two things are linked, because you need to be able to then inform your team of what they need to do to roll that back and get your organic traffic back. So keeping an eye on the website changes and trying to minimize them or structure them where possible is really important. Also, keeping an eye on industry changes. Now, I think we're all very, very aware of how competitors can affect our own marketing results. It can be very painful at times to be ranking really well for a particular keyword and then a competitor to just shoot on up the rankings and overtake you. But if you don't know what's going on with your competitors, then you don't really know what to do to change it. And this is the same with your industry as a whole, in fact. If there is a massive change in the way the industry works, and we're seeing that a lot at the moment because the way we lead our lives is changing very much at the moment. So the way that specific industries are having to adapt to the current situation is also meaning that the way people are searching for products and services, the way that industries are being able to deliver those products and services has changed. And because of that, we just need to know what's going on so that we can make sure that our organic campaigns are adapting in that same way. Competitors, you need to know whether you've got new competitors on the scene, whether competitors have closed business. And that, again, is something that is happening a lot at the moment. And we need to keep an eye on that because that, again, will have a massive impact on how we are doing organically. Now, it's very easy for you to say, oh, yeah, we've shot up in the rankings, we're getting a load of new traffic, and it actually being the result of a competitor closing down and not because you've done anything that's super effective. So if you really want to be able to prove the return on investment of SEO activity, you need to be able to discount it being any of these external factors because it's not necessarily something that is repeatable. And the goal of any SEO activity is to be able to repeat the success so that you continue to grow your website and it's not just a one-hit wonder. So things like competitors closing down is terrible in general, but it also means that you might have that inflated organic traffic for a period of time that isn't really genuine. And algorithms. I probably don't need to talk too much about how algorithms can affect the success of an SEO campaign because we've all felt the pain before. But interestingly enough, I have noticed that during my time of working within agencies and seeing the sorts of SEO reports that go out to clients, it is very, very common for us to blame drops in organic traffic on algorithm changes. But you don't often see people saying, I think we've gone up in the rankings because of an algorithm change. But potentially that could be the case. So if you are aware of there being some changes with the algorithms that could well be affecting your industry or your type of website, it's worth keeping that in mind when you're looking over your data and trying to prove that the work that you've been doing is working. Because actually, it could just be that you fared particularly well from a recent algorithm update and you're seeing a lot of increase of traffic because actually you've been promoted in the search results, but not really because of anything you've done, more because there's been a change in the way the search engines are looking at web pages. So when you've kind of got a grasp of all of that and what's going on there, you can start to look at some of the other results that you are seeing. What other than organic traffic has been affected by the industry, by competitors, by other changes that are going on? And the first place I tend to look when I've noticed a big increase in search traffic or a big decrease in search traffic is actually what's going on with the paid campaigns. Because if there is a surge in the paid search campaigns or a decrease in traffic from the paid search campaigns, that might give you a little bit of insight into search behavior in general. And normally when those two things correlate, it gives you a bit of an indication that there is a change in the way that people are searching, or there is a change in the sorts of searches that are driving traffic. So it's a good place to start. Look at your paid campaigns, talk to your paid team if you can, and see what's going on with them. Because if they're not seeing any changes, but you are seeing a massive increase in the organic traffic going to your website, then that's again a little bit of an indication that actually you might just be doing something really well and your organic traffic is growing as a result of that. Whereas if both paid and organic traffic is raising at the same time and sort of at the same rate, then that would suggest it's something outside of the work that you're both doing that might be influencing that. Social media. What's going on with social media? Is your brand suddenly having a surge of interaction on social media platforms? Because if it is, that could also then lend itself to an increase in brand searches that are driving organic traffic to your website. If your social media team has somehow managed to create an amazing buzz around your brand, somehow, I mean through their skill obviously, has created an amazing buzz around your brand and they are getting a lot of interactions on social media sites, it might be that people are becoming more familiar with you as a brand, and as a result your organic traffic is starting to rise, and that's great. But again, that's probably more from the work that they're doing, and the organic success is partly because of the wonderful stuff that they're doing. So you can't necessarily take credit for it in its entirety. So understanding what your social media teams are doing and how their traffic is behaving and how their interactions are going will give you a little bit of an indication as to whether they are partly responsible for the increase in traffic that you are seeing through the organic channel. Also, have a look at referral traffic, because referral traffic isn't necessarily something that you as an SEO are going to have a huge amount of control over. If you've been doing a lot of work with backlinks recently, then potentially it is. If you have had a really successful outreach campaign and you've got a lot of great backlinks pointing to your website, then hopefully they are also sending traffic through to your website, because that's kind of the sorts of links you want, really, ones that are so relevant that the people that are visiting those other websites that are linking through to your site actually visit your site as a result. So if you are noticing that referral traffic is going up and you know that you've been working on some outreach campaigns recently, then look at the sources of that increase in traffic. Which websites are sending more visitors your way? Because that's another way that you can show the return on investment from SEO. And direct traffic. Direct traffic is hideous. I hate direct traffic because it is just a black hole of data. Direct traffic is really, really hard to analyze. It should be traffic that has arrived on your website because they have typed your website's URL in directly, or they have clicked on a bookmark from when they visited you before. But in reality, direct traffic is a whole host of other things all lumped in with that. And because of that, direct traffic could be increasing because of work that you've done with organic search, or it could be increasing for a whole host of other reasons. But direct traffic is often something I will look at when I'm trying to work out trends with how my organic traffic is growing or decreasing. Because if my organic traffic is decreasing at a rate, but I'm noticing that direct traffic is increasing at a similar rate, it could be that traffic that used to be apportioned to the organic search channel within Google Analytics is for reasons now being apportioned to the direct channel instead. So it might be that you're not losing traffic necessarily, it's just getting obscured within your data programs. So direct traffic is something you need to be keeping an eye on. And offline. Are we allowed to talk about offline marketing when we're looking at SEO? I'm going to do it. Offline marketing.
Yeah, go on ahead. It's not a problem.
Are you sure? I mean, it's quite a distance for you to come and take the microphone off me, so I'm going to do it anyway. Offline marketing absolutely is going to have an impact on your SEO campaigns because it's raising your brand. It is going to be talking about your products, your services, it's getting people familiar with you. And as a result, similar to how social media will be promoting you, you are going to see that there will be a direct increase in organic search traffic when there has been successful offline campaigns. The tricky thing is linking the two. And that often takes a lot of forethought and preparing, working with your offline marketing team to make sure that information that you're getting through Google Analytics, for instance, is translating itself to show whether the SEO increase is actually coming from other sources like an offline campaign, for instance. So that's all well and good. It's probably stuff that you might already even know. What exactly do we do to prove the worth of SEO campaigns? The work that we tirelessly do day in, day out, how do we actually show our bosses and our clients that the stuff that we're doing is worth their time and their money? The key is going granular. Now, something that I have been trying to teach my master's students is site-wide data is essentially useless. It's truthful. When you are looking at proving the worth of ROI, there's too many acronyms going on today, proving the worth of SEO, there is no point in you looking at the increases in organic traffic as a whole. Because how do you prove that that was actually a result of the work that you've been doing? If you have only been working on, say, 1 or 2 pages on a website, and yet a whole load of other pages are suddenly increasing in traffic as well, how do you relate that back to the work that you've been doing? So the key is to go granular. Look exactly at which pages have been affected. If you are noticing that there is an organic traffic increase, to what pages? Are they pages that actually you've had some input on recently? It's a little bit harder to do when it's a change that might have happened across an entire site. For instance, you might have worked on some technical issues that you've noticed on your website. But if it's optimization of specific pages, and they are the ones that are increasing in traffic, and that increase in traffic is correlating with an increase in rankings, and it's happening just about around the time that you have finished making those changes, then you have got some good evidence that the work that you're doing is actually having a direct impact on organic traffic to your site. Now, that sounds simple and very obvious. But yet the marketing reports that I have seen, the conversations that I've had with other SEOs, it always makes me slightly curious as to whether people are actually doing this on a daily basis or whether we just kind of nod along in theory. Because a lot of the time I'm just seeing things reported on a site-wide basis, but we really do need to look specifically at the pages we've had an impact on when we are looking to report the success of SEO. Look at which keywords have been affected. If they're keywords that you've not actually been working on recently, that you've not been focusing on, yet suddenly they are rising in the ranks and driving more traffic to pages, then again, can you really prove that it's your work that has been driving that increase in rankings? Or actually, is it just a side effect of something else that's going on? Industry changes, competitors changes, that sort of thing. You really need to look specifically at things that you have been doing in order to prove that your work is actually paying off. Also, what time period has the change occurred over? If it's happening, it started happening before you even made any changes to the web page, then again, can you really take credit for that? Looking at the time period that the change occurred over can give you a little bit of an indication as to whether it's something that you have done, or whether perhaps it's something that is seasonal, or maybe it's something that has just happened recently. And because of that, you're then able to start digging into that data and work out, actually, was it your impact, or is it the result of something else? Look at things like what locations have been driving more traffic to your website. If you notice that traffic from organic search in Australia has been rising, but your website only caters to people in England, then is that likely to be the result of something that you've been doing? If all of your marketing effort and all your SEO focus has been on the UK area, then are you able to suggest that the rise in traffic from Australia is necessarily the result of something you've been doing? You need to really be looking at where that traffic is coming from so that you can start to prove that the work that you've been doing is what's causing that rise. And part of doing that is eliminating false data from your reporting. Are you actually reporting on accurate data? Because it might be that you are getting some really good statistics out of Google Analytics and you're able to show those to your boss or your client, and you go away smiling because all of the arrows are pointing up, all of the figures are green, all the percentages are rising. But is that data actually accurate? Look at your Google Search Console rankings. Now, Google Search Console is an amazing tool, but there is still a little bit of doubt within the SEO community as to how much you can trust the ranking data that you're getting. Google Search Console is wonderful, but it does have its limitations. Things like the fact that you can't actually filter out internal traffic from the results that you're getting within it. That means that sometimes the results you get in Google Search Console aren't entirely accurate. I recently had a conversation with someone who was talking about the fact that Google Search Console rankings aren't actually that accurate at all unless you're going straight into using their API rather than using the software that you and I probably are using often. That's not something I know a huge amount about, but it did raise the question in my mind, am I reporting on accurate data? Or actually, when I go to something like Search Console and try to talk about average click-through rate and average position, is that information accurate? Dark traffic is a massive problem with our reporting. I mentioned before that direct traffic tends to be the lumping together of a lot of different sources of traffic, but essentially this dark traffic, this traffic that we don't really know the absolute source of, can massively throw off your reporting. Dark traffic is essentially anything that the likes of Google Analytics cannot properly attribute within Google Analytics. So it could be, for instance, that social media traffic is being wrongly attributed as something. I'll often see it within Google Analytics accounts that some of the lesser known search engines or some of the subdomains of search engines are being reported as referral traffic rather than organic traffic. And that dark traffic can have a massive impact on us being able to prove that our SEO is paying off. I've seen it before where a good sort of 17% of the traffic in a referral section of Google Analytics was actually probably better attributed to organic search. That's a lot of traffic data that we're missing out on being able to claim as a result of our SEO work. Keyword tracking tools. I love keyword tracking tools because I find it just so very, very pleasing when you can look and see all of those green arrows pointing up. It's such a sense of satisfaction. But what you do need to know is how your keyword tracking tool actually works. Where's that data being pulled from? How is it getting that information in terms of what location might it be tracking? Because if, for instance, you have set up your campaigns to track from your office, so all of the data is pulling through from rankings as if you were in London searching for something, but your client actually works in Newcastle, then the tracking data that you're reporting might not necessarily be accurate for their location and their customer's location. So it's just worth keeping in mind that you need to really understand how your tracking tools actually work and what the data you're reporting on actually means. Because if you get that slightly wrong, then you could well be reporting on rankings that aren't actually that relevant for your customer and your customer's base. Step 7 of this very convoluted process is limit assumptions. Don't make guesses with your data. If you're looking to prove the ROI of your SEO, you cannot just make assumptions. You can't just think, oh, I think the traffic's gone up because of this thing I did last week. You need to be able to prove it. Because if people are looking to part with their budget or keep using you as a contractor, then they need to know for certain that the work you're doing is paying off. So that means not just blaming things on seasonality. So if you see that there is a drop in traffic, you can't just say, oh, well, it's that time of year, isn't it? There will be some times when, yes, obviously traffic will decrease or increase. If you are, for instance, you are an e-commerce brand and you sell a lot over Christmas, then it is natural for you to see an increase in traffic around December time. You can't really try to claim that that's necessarily the result of the SEO work that you've been doing if every single year you've seen a similar trend of that increase in December. But equally, if you see an increase in May and you've seen it a few years before that, you can't really necessarily say that it isn't organic traffic that's been causing that, because unless you actually look at the data, you don't know. It could well be that, yes, you've seen a seasonal increase and you've seen that increase every year, but actually the work that you've been doing means that the increase this year is even greater than it was the previous years. So you need to look at that data if you really genuinely want to prove that the work you're doing is worth the budget. And also try to get away from the habit of just bragging when things are going well. It's something that I notice that as SEOs we sometimes do. Organic traffic goes up, we claim it's because of the awesome work that we're doing, and we kind of leave it like that. But the problem with doing that is if you don't really go into detail in analyzing that data and proving that it's your work, is if the next month when you come to report all of the traffic's down, you're probably going to have to claim that is your fault as well, unless you get into this habit of actually substantiating your claims that the work you're doing is good. Final step, I hope, I've no idea how many steps are in this now. Check your theory. Is this what the data really says? Now, I labor this point because I have been marking, as I said, a lot of data analytics reports over the past week. And a common mistake that I've seen amongst a lot of them is people describing the data, interrogating the data, and drawing conclusions that aren't necessarily accurate. So things like, has this happened before? If you are saying, I reckon this increase in organic traffic is because of this campaign, have you actually spent time looking back to see whether there are similar increases happened at other times? It could be, for instance, seasonal. So it could be the exact same increase happened the year before. Unless you are looking at whether this particular action has led to this increase in traffic before, or whether similar work might well have paid off in a similar way, you can't really say with certainty that it is your work that's been paying off. So for instance, if you've noticed in the past that changing a meta title on a particular page has seen a dramatic increase in rankings quite quickly, then you can say with some certainty that that similar pattern that you've seen this time around is probably because of the same cause. So it's that getting to understand how your data behaves, how your traffic behaves for your particular industry and your website that allows you to then start to really have, with a bit more certainty, the understanding that your work is what has caused that. Look at things like, are the changes sudden? If it's happened overnight, then that might mean that something has changed that is outside of your control, unless you happen to have made changes that day before, for instance. If the changes are very sudden, as in you've seen a really quick increase in traffic, or you've seen a really quick decrease in bounce rate, or you've seen a really quick increase in conversions, then don't just assume that it's something you've done well. It might well be, but it could also be an issue with tracking, for instance, and you're getting false positives from your data. At the end of the day, you need to be able to link that the work you've done and the factors that you are aware of and have controlled are leading to the results that you are reporting. That is the key to being able to prove that your SEO work has been paying off. You can identify each of these aspects and you can show how they are leading to the results that you are getting. And then the real final step is communicating your findings well. That means reporting on your data in a way that your client or your boss actually understands. And this brings me back to my example of the estate agents. I didn't care whether my photos of my house had been clicked on 3, 4, 5 times. I didn't care. All I wanted to know was how close they were to getting more people to look around my house and ultimately buy my house. And that's the same with our clients and our bosses. They will have their own set of KPIs that they are working towards. And we need to make sure that we are communicating what we have done in a way that makes sense to them. So that means things like communicating the changes that we're doing, communicating what we've done recently and how that might have impacted the results that we're seeing. Every time you're reporting something to your client or your boss, speak their language. Don't use jargon. Say things that actually resonate with them. If they talk about bookings rather than conversions, talk about that. Because every time you do that, you are helping to reinforce that, for a start, you understand their industry and what they are talking about, but also that you are on the same wavelength and that you are interested in the same sorts of KPIs that they are. Leave out the jargon wherever possible. Indexation, canonicalization, it means nothing to most people. Don't talk about it unless you can really explain what it is. It's absolutely right for you to talk about those things, but just not necessarily dropping the complicated jargon word and then leaving. You need to explain exactly what you mean by it, because at the end of the day, if you use jargon too many times, it really, really turns people off from listening to you. Having gone through all of these marketing reports that my students have been writing, it's amazed me how quickly my brain has just kind of shut down as I've been reading because of there being too many statistics or too much jargon being used. Think of it like a marketing presentation. At the end of the day, if you are trying to prove that your work is paying off, then you need to be marketing yourself. You need to be speaking clearly, communicating well. It applies to talking to your bosses and your clients just as much as it does to the actual work that we're carrying out. Always relate the work that you're doing back to revenue, or whatever it is the core KPI for your client. If it's not money, it might be awareness or exposure of a different kind. But make sure that every time you're trying to prove the return on investment of your SEO, that is the core metric that you'll bring you back to. Don't talk about bounce rate. Don't even talk about conversion rate. Talk specifically about how you have improved the amount of money that they are getting through their website. Because at the end of the day, that's what decides whether you get to keep your budget or not. And try wherever you can to show the cross-channel value of the work that you're doing. If something that you have done can be reused as an asset for the social media team, or the work that you have been doing into keyword research can be used by your paid team, then talk about that. Talk about how you've added value to other aspects of marketing or other areas of the business. Because again, that's a great way of showing that the SEO that you're doing is actually paying off. Show additional value wherever you can. And that might mean, for instance, that you have noticed through your research that there is a gap in the market that hasn't quite been looked at by the business yet. So talk about that. Show how you are adding value to the rest of the business as a whole. And wherever you can, whenever you're talking about the return on investment of SEO, prove that it is repeatable success. Identify how what you've done in the past has led to this increase in SEO traffic, which has led to this increase in revenue for the website, and talk about how that process can be repeated and scaled and done again. And finally, be okay with admitting failure. If something that you have done, some SEO work that you've carried out has actually led to a decrease in traffic or a drop in rankings or less money for the client, talk about it, because you have to learn from your mistakes. You have to hold your hands up and talk about those mistakes so that at the end of the day, your client or your boss trusts that you are learning and those mistakes won't be made again. And that is all I have to talk and teach about today.
Thanks a lot, Helen. That was very interesting. Just when I thought when I had SEO figured out, you showed me a whole different playing field with a lot of moving parts, and I'm just trying to soak it all in to just to understand if there are more additional things that we should focus on. And I'm sure that there are, because like for example, when you said about the data from Google Search Console and from Google Analytics, I was surprised to see that you can't really get clear data, and about the dark traffic, that is a whole different story. So that was very interesting. Thanks a lot. We have a couple of questions from our audience. So if you don't mind, we're going to take a couple of them.
Sure.
Okay, so the first one is from Athar, and he is asking, SEO being an ongoing process, what are the lead and lag indicators to monitor to be sure that your ROI is on track and moving upwards?
Good question. Very good question. I would try to work out what the core KPIs are for your end goal, essentially. So what is it that you're working towards? Is it that you're trying to increase revenue? You're trying to increase bookings? You're trying to increase sales? What is that macro goal? And try to work out what the micro goals are that are related to that. So for instance, if you are trying to increase the amount of bookings on a website through SEO, what other indicators can you look at that would suggest that people are minded towards booking? So it could be that they are downloading a details brochure, or they are clicking to call and getting in touch in some other way. And it might be that your SEO is so early on in its process that you've not quite got to seeing that increase in things like bookings, but you might notice an increase in some of those other micro conversions. And equally, looking at things like increases in traffic to the specific pages that you're working on, all of those indicators can be looked at in a much smaller scale before you're actually starting to see those big changes happening on the website.
Yeah, so yeah, you have to get specific to basically figure out what to look out for, right?
Absolutely.
All right, thanks a lot. And then we have another question. It's about keywords. So for example, you have a couple of keywords that are not ranking at all, but they are super critical for your campaign. Is there like a good starting point to integrate them into your campaign for good SEO results?
I think in that instance, probably your best bet is to fudge the numbers. No, I would suggest that if you have some really critical, yeah, just lie. No, that's not the advice. What you need to look at things like, well, why are they not ranking? Is it because you've only just started focusing on them? Are you not focusing on them at all yet? Because the easiest way for you to start ranking for a particular keyword is to make sure you're using that keyword within your website, and hopefully within the structure of a keyword mapping across your website. So why are you not ranking for it? So look at that data. Is there just no search volume for it? Are you trying to rank for a keyword that actually isn't that important for your website, even though you think it's a money turn for you? So why are you not ranking for it needs to be your first question.
Okay, great. So I hope that helped for this anonymous question. But we have another question from Mitchell, and he's asking, how would you illustrate which keywords are driving goals conversions in Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics? Even if Google is synced with your Search Console, you can drill down into keywords that convert into organic traffic.
You can use Search Console as much as you trust it to understand what keywords are driving traffic to specific pages. So that is something you can look at. It's a combination then of looking at that Search Console data and then understanding through Google Analytics or whatever tool you're using, which of those pages are leading to conversions. So you might not get real clarity over exactly which keywords are leading specifically to conversions, but you can start to look at things like, well, within this set of time period of a month, for instance, this particular keyword was driving this amount of traffic to our website. And during that same month, we noticed that the page it was driving traffic to was converting much better. So you can start to try to link some of those separate bits of data together and try to paint a picture that way.
We actually have a lot of more questions coming in, and I'm just hope that we can pick the right ones to focus on.
Go for the easy ones.
All right. So what do you think about the future of SEO with the arrival of voice assistants like Alexa and Google Home?
I think not much is going to change, quite honestly. I have had a Google Home in my house for probably a year or so now, and the only thing I ask it is the time. I think that voice search is something that was really bigged up right at the beginning. I mean, we all heard the statistics that were suggesting that by 2020, like 50% of searches would be conducted through voice. It's just not the case. I think that there are some very valid use cases for voice search, but I think a lot of the time, the same sort of activity you're carrying out around optimizing your website for typed search queries is going to pay off for voice queries as well. It's that kind of long tail keyword strategy that you need to be considering, but that is probably forming part of your SEO campaign anyway. So I personally don't see a huge amount of difference needed between doing well for voice search and normal organic search.
All right, thanks a lot. Okay, we have another question from Johannes, and he's painting a picture for us. So let's say I'm an SEO agency working for a property broker agent, and you said that the data they are mentioning for you is not really meaningful for you as the owner. As an SEO agency, what is the best way of proving that you're good enough? And he has specified in other ways to say, what is the most meaningful report for a property owner that SEO can provide?
Oh, that's really interesting. That's so when I was talking specifically about the data that I was getting from my estate agent, it wasn't really from an SEO perspective. It was more that they wanted to prove that they were getting lots of people to look at my house online. So it wasn't specifically about SEO. It was just in general, how were they able to prove that they were getting close to selling my house? I think if you as an SEO were being involved in that level of communication with the seller of the house, then potentially the sorts of information you might want to talk about is how the website itself is performing potentially for the sorts of search terms that people might be using to find a house like yours. I think that's probably the most useful information that you could provide.
We have a question from Vishal, and his question is, what are the key factors that we have to monitor and analyze for the ROI for a brand website, which doesn't sell anything directly, but is a brand website?
Very much would depend on what the KPIs of the brand as a whole are. Really, when you're looking at deciding what your SEO goals should be and what your SEO measures should be, they need to feed into the overarching marketing goals and KPIs and also the business goals and KPIs. So what is it that you as a marketing team are trying to improve? Is it the amount of people visiting your website? Is it the amount of people who are talking about your brand? Is it that you are just looking for people to sign up to something? What is it that you're working towards? And then when you've got an idea of what the sort of overarching marketing goals are, or indeed even the business goals, what are they trying to do as a business? What do they think is a measure of success? Then you can get a better idea of what, as an SEO, you need to be looking at. Because it might not be that you're selling anything because it's not an e-commerce site, but what is it that is an indication that your work is actually having an impact on the business as a whole? So if it's that they want to increase the amount of people who phone to get in touch with them about the charity that they run, then the sorts of goals you can look at are around how you're driving organic traffic to the website and how that organic traffic is then converting to phone calls, for instance. So very much depends on your particular website and what it's looking to achieve.
Great. And we have another simple question. What is the average time needed for, well, it's not simple, but it's pretty vague, and the phrasing is simple. What is the average time needed for a change to take effect in rankings?
I couldn't possibly tell you. I'm going to give the standard answer any SEO will give. It depends. I have seen changes happen within a couple of days. I've also seen them take a long, long time because it will depend on your competition. It will depend on the industry that you're in, how your website's set up. It can be so there's so many different factors that would go into how quickly a change will impact rankings. Okay.
We have another question from Leonard. How do you convince a client or boss that the simple instructions they gave instructions they gave you won't work, and you actually have to do 5 other things before you can even consider doing what they ask?
That really sounds like it's something that you've suffered recently.
Yeah,
so there's a lot of pain behind that question, I think. Essentially, I personally would talk to them about the cost benefit of what they've suggested. So, okay, they've suggested this thing that they think is really worthwhile doing. You need to consider, is it actually worthwhile doing? Is it something that is going to move the needle? Is it going to result in more conversions from organic traffic, etc.? Is it worth your time? If you think it is, then great. So you might want to set out exactly what is involved in that process so they get a much better understanding of what is going to consume your time as an SEO. If you don't think it's worth the time, then again, you need to do that. You need to show, well, actually, this one thing you've asked me to do is actually 5 smaller things. Those 5 smaller things are actually going to take 30 hours for me to implement. And at the end of it, this is what I predict is going to be the result. Do you really want me to go ahead with that 30 hours of work? Or would you like me to do this, this, and this, which is what I'd originally planned to do with those 30 hours? So it's about giving them options, but really spelling it out clearly, because a lot of the time, they might just not know what is involved in the particular thing they've asked you to do. And it's your job to really clearly explain it to them.
Well, we have from Pascal, and he's wondering, how do you choose between large target keywords with numerous requests per month and more specific ones with fewer search volume? And in your keywords choice and positioning on the website? So also a very not specific question, so probably the answer is going to be very vague as well.
It is unfortunately quite a vague answer. It needs to be part of an informed keyword strategy. So you're not always going to choose the keywords that are really the money keywords, the ones that if you're ranking for, you'd be super proud of yourself. Sometimes you are going to go for those less searched for keywords that actually are probably more likely to convert, but it needs to be part of a whole strategy. I tend to look at it on the basis of budget and competition levels. Is this particular keyword that is searched for a lot actually quite competitive? Am I up against people who've got a much higher budget in the search results than my particular client has? If I'm up against the likes of Amazon, am I actually going to be able to compete with them for this particular keyword? Or is there a better strategy that involves me taking some of those less searchable keywords and converting more traffic that's come from those? So really it's that kind of cost benefit analysis again. Do I go for those really high search for volume keywords that I might not actually rank very well for, or am I better off going for the ones that are going to be easier to rank for, but not as many people will be searching for them?
Okay, thanks. And we have another simple rather question. How do you stay on top of the changes in algorithms that Google may be making that affect SEO? So basically you sort of addressed that question by, you said that you have to monitor the relevant websites that cover these questions, right? Or...
Absolutely. It's hard because there are changes every single day, and it's difficult for you to know which ones are actually significant to your industry or not. What I would caution is not every single algorithm change is going to dramatically impact your rankings and your traffic. So as an industry, SEOs, we like to get very animated about algorithm changes. And if you are following SEOs on Twitter, then you will notice them suddenly get very, very excited when they think there might have been a significant change to the algorithms. But you do need to take a bit of a step back and think, okay, well, what sort of website is this algorithm change actually targeting? Is it the same industry that I'm in? Is it the same type of website that I have? Is it not? Because if it's not, then it might not be impacting you at all. And you just need to wait a bit. Because if you're noticing there's a lot of fluctuation around keywords, for instance, it could be that Google is rolling something out. It might not be permanent. It might be that it's in the process of rolling something out that takes a while to roll out. So keep your ear to the ground when it comes to algorithm changes, but don't jump on every single mention of an algorithm change because it might not actually impact you.
Thanks again. And another question, this time from Vera, and she's asking, for tracking analytics, Google is the default universal go-to tool. How do you have any other analytics traffic tracking apps that you've used that you feel might be better?
Good question. Very good question. I tend to favor Google Analytics. I think that for a free tool is very, very comprehensive, and it's one that I am familiar with and love using. So that's my go-to. And equally, I like to stay within the same suite of tools, which is why Google Tag Manager is obviously very good for that, and looking at Google Search Console, because at the end of the day, I work in the UK. A lot of my clients are based in the UK. For us, Google is the main search engine that we focus on, and therefore keeping within that Google suite of data tools is really useful for me. I do know there are some not free tools that are very highly regarded. So Adobe Analytics, for instance, is one that I hear mentioned a lot. It's not one that I've had the opportunity to use yet, though.
And the last question for sure, because we're going to be closing, ending this after this question. The question is about attracting traffic for mobile screens. So pop-ups are a great way to capture leads, but it's suggested not to use them on mobile screens. Is there an alternative to avoid this issue? And what suggestions can you give to improve the ROI for mobile devices and mobile screens?
Okay, so interstitials, as they're known, these pop-ups are a bad idea if you are looking to get traffic from organic search results onto a mobile device. But they're only an issue if they are going to show when a user first arrives on a web page from the organic search results. So for instance, if a user is on their mobile phone, searches on Google, lands on your website, and they get a pop-up, then that is something that Google said they will demote you in those rankings for. If, however, they come from a Google search on their mobile onto your website, onto page A, and there's no pop-up, but then navigate to page B and there is a pop-up, that's okay. So if you are absolutely determined to use pop-ups, and I would caution that you maybe do some investigations as to whether they are good for conversion for your particular website. If you want to use pop-ups, then essentially there are ways of doing it. maybe making sure that they only appear when someone navigates to a second page in their user journey and not on the first page.
Great. Helen, I've learned so much today. I'm very grateful for you that you joined us and that you shared your experience and knowledge and answered all these questions to help out our viewers. And so once again, I just wanted to ask you if you have a favorite question that you heard today.
Oh, that's really good.
We don't have to. You don't have to answer right now. We'll send you. I'll send you a list, and we can discuss it afterwards. But we want to
good shout. Yes.
Give the
I
prize.
want to make sure I remember them all.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely there were too many. So I'm going to send you a list, and then you can decide on your own and let us know,
Great.
and we'll reach out to the person who will receive the optimum subscription plan for 1 month. And so once again, thanks, and we will be sending out the recording about this webinar in a couple of days. So be on the lookout for that, and stay safe in the meantime. And until next time, once again, Helen, thanks. You've been great.
Thanks.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye-bye.